Descript, which is very similar to that. It does some pretty nifty stuff, which I think I can show you a good example of here. So this is Descript. I'm going to go back out to our library and I'll open up a file. And this is an interview document. Now what we did, and I don't have internet here, so I'm tethering off of my phone, so this may not work. Let's try another file. Yeah, I don't think I got enough juice to pull this file in. But I'll tell you what would happen is you can drop an audio or video file here, and within 2 to 3 minutes you'll get a full transcript. The AI recognizes different voices and analyzes those voices and recognizes them, so it'll automatically tag when speaker changes happen. And you'll name it in the first couple of speaker exchanges, and throughout the transcript it'll be accurately transcribed. Sometimes there'll be like crosstalk that you'll have to double check and other things like that, but for the most part you get about 85–90% of the way there. And you don't have to sit there and scan it, listen, slide through the wave and find it. You can just relatively rely on it. It'll then produce a transcript inside of the Descript tool set. And if I had the transcript here, I could show you, but you can then select a thing called Find Filler Words. Or Remove Filler Words. And it'll pop up over this left-hand thing, and every filler word, the ums, the ahs, all the verbal tics that even the most accomplished speakers have, will be highlighted in yellow in the transcript, and it'll appear over here in this sidebar. And you can then go through and search through them, find them. Maybe there's a false positive, it's a word sounded like one thing, but it's actually the other. You can scrub the timeline right there and listen to it and confirm. Then you can uncheck it as a filler word. And then once you've gone through the whole thing and confirmed all the filler words, you can check a box and hit a button and remove all those filler words. And when it removes them, it removes them from the transcript and from the audio. And you can either put in a gap of a space, or it will duck the audio and make it come to basically do an edit, right? So now you've got a clean transcript and you've got clean audio that runs a little faster, sounds a little cleaner. Okay, and then the other tool that I love in here is, let's say your CEO mispronounces a partner's name, and you get a note from, the CEO's handler and says, "Hey, I said Bell when I meant Dell," right? Well, you can then go search the transcript, find, and I said Bell, but it was in context of the new Optiplex server, whatever, right? So you search for Optiplex and Bell, and you find that location, and you can literally then go into the transcript and change the B to a D, so it says Dell. Your transcript is edited, and then it will go and it will re-render that word using the voice analysis into the speaker in his voice saying the word Dell, and put it into the audio file.
Is this working only on audio or work on video files?
You can do it with video files too. If you're going straight to audio, you get a clean, almost ready-to-use file. Obviously, you might have to do some sweetening on it, take out some air, room noise or whatever. But in the video, you'll have to do more work to do face morphs, because it's going to do a clean cut on the video. Mm-hmm. So you'll have those little kind of max headroom moments a lot.
But the idea is you're eventually repairing the audio with an edited video,
right? Or yeah, so in most cases you're going to do the audio, you're going to bring it back in, and you're going to sync it, and then clean it up. But think about how much time you just saved in that process, right? Why do you care about a transcript? Can anybody tell me why transcripts are important to you?
Closed captioning.
Closed captioning. So accessibility is a big reason.
It's a faster way to get through your footage when you're editing.
Faster way to go through your footage. There's a lot of tools now that will actually tag clips with keywords based on the transcript.
Transcript editing.
Transcript-based editing, yeah. How many people go out to YouTube with their deliverables? So YouTube creates a machine language transcript, which is okay, but not great. you can replace it with this transcript, which will be better. And the reason that transcript is important on any of those in Vimeo too, is that that's how the search engines catalog and rank that stuff, right? So the cleaner, better your transcript is, the over time, organic search engine traffic will increase because you have a better transcript.
Are you saying like when you would upload it as the caption to get like the better ranking, or are you saying like you would upload it, where are you?
Whether you do it as a caption or not, there's a place for transcript.
Okay.
And so when the spiders crawl the site, it's looking for that, that audio, that text representation, because it's easier for it to search.
Okay.
And if you've gone through, and all transcripts are going to be imperfect, even human transcripts are going to be imperfect. But if you're doing a better job and you're not relying on Google's machine translation, and you've used a better tool and you've created a better transcript, then you're going to, over time, it's not going to be immediate. You're not going to upload the script transcript and magically you're going to jump to the top of the search rankings. But over time, if you're doing that consistently and you're producing quite a bit of content, then the algorithm will understand that you are a more trusted source and that you provide more accurate content, and slowly you'll creep up. So it's a long game, but it's an important long game. Transcripts are also important if you're doing, and by the way, just I've done pieces of this talk on the floor, so you might have seen some of that, and we will be covering some different stuff, but I just wanted to let you know that. So the other reason is content atomization. So, which means basically breaking up your content, creating new content out of it, whether it's an IG story or a soundbite or quotes, full quotes for blogs or whatever the case may be. Having a great transcript where you can search through your content and identify smaller particles of that content that you want to repurpose. Transcripts are a great starting point for that.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So is Descript another text to edit tool, or like can it be used for that purpose?
Tell me, I'm not following what you mean.
Like, can I upload a video and then edit the transcript?
Yes.
And download, so it's a second.
Yep, so you upload the video or the audio, it'll generate a transcript, then you can go through and edit that transcript. You can export it out as a Word file or I believe as an SRT file too. So you can, or if not, you can take it into other captioning instances. You can also use it for translations, right? So you can then hand that off to be translated. You can, with some of the other AI tools I'm going to talk to, you can hand the transcript to the AI tool and say, write me a blog post that's no more than 800 words that summarizes this presentation, and then have a nice, different way of approaching the content and put it below the video or above the video on a blog post, right? Now, obviously, and I'll say this up front, I talk about it later too, but never ever put anything directly out of an AI into the wild without a human being looking at it. You're just inviting trouble, okay? I'll talk a little bit about that more specifically in a minute, but you could like get the rough framework of a blog post pretty quickly using that methodology. So copy. So Descript is one, Notion is another. Yes, sir.
What's the subscription model they have for Descript?
Descript, I think, is $100 for one seat for a year. And if you've ever done transcript notation, you're going to make that money back in the first project, right? Like, and you can add seats if you have a collaborative project. It's really not that expensive. And that's one of the great things about so many of these tools is they're not terribly expensive. And anybody that's done a lot of that work before will instantly see why it's valuable. So team notes, Notion, how many people or anybody using Notion here? Okay, so if you're not familiar, the website is notion.so. It's hard to describe what Notion is. It's kind of a note-taking app and a Wikipedia app and a database, easy to build human language database tool. It's a really cool tool for kind of adding information. How would you describe Notion?
Well, I use it mostly for project. It's like everything, but project planning, like you can keep. There's a lot of like templates where they call it a second brain.
Yeah.
Where basically you can like offload anything.
Yeah.
And customize it to like whatever you want it to be
I could teach a whole class on how to use Notion for production pipelines, right? And which maybe I'll do next year. But the specific to AI, yes.
It's great that like it combines a lot of different tools. So rather than having like Google spreadsheets in one place
Yeah.
and then like other things having like in all these different places, you can put it all in one and
Yeah.
have easy access. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, exactly. And you can embed movies and all kinds of stuff too. So it's, if you've used, I can never remember the name, but Microsoft had a tool that's SharePoint. If you've used SharePoint, it's kind of like everything you ever wanted SharePoint to be, but it never was, right? Or Lotus Notes for the, for those older folks like me in the room. So in any case, great tool, but specifically they launched about 4 months ago Notion AI. And so the use case here is you can take if you do team meetings over Zoom, you can take the Zoom transcript, you can dump it into Notion, and then you can say, write me a meeting summary from the above transcript, include action items. And it will parse the whole thing, spit you out a bulleted list of the, of all the notes that are in the Zoom, that were discussed in the Zoom call, and then an action item list that says, deliver specs for project X by XYZ date assigned to Doug, right? So your mileage may vary depending on, but again, it gets you 90% of the way there. And if you had to sit there and listen and transcribe and do handwritten notes and then come back and build, it's just a quick time saver. Excuse me. Creating, and then the tool that's going to blow your mind is ChatGPT, and I'm hoping I have enough bandwidth to show you that. By the way, Notion's AI is built on ChatGPT 3, so it just has specific ways into it that are really powerful. So here's the use case that made me realize ChatGPT was going to change everything. I recently got back into fish keeping in aquariums, and I'm specifically interested in a type of fish keeping called aquascaping, where you basically create little underwater gardens that the fish live in. It's really pretty and relaxing. When I've had a bad day, I can sit and literally lose myself for an hour just watching fish tanks. And so I was doing some research into plants, and as a person coming back to the hobby, what would be the easiest plants to do? And then I read this article about ChatGPT being able to build tables. And so then I crafted this prompt, which says, build me a table of low-tech aquarium plants. Include columns for scientific name, common name, position in tank, color, and body URL. And it's not going to work because I don't have internet. Okay, let me show you what it produces. If that were to work, it would have built this list, which is just the same prompt run earlier, and it would have built it in 5 or 6 seconds. Someone else in here has seen me do this demo before, but that can confirm that it went pretty quick, right? In 5 or 6 seconds, I had this. And notice, I didn't tell it mid-ground, foreground, background. ChatGPT figured that out, because a lot of this information is out there in tabular form anyway. And so it's like, oh, this must be what he means, and it pulled that stuff in. Can you think of a use case in your pre-production planning where you could use something like this? Right? Let's do another one. I'm going to just show you it. Write a profile of Alex Lindsay. Include social media handles. Now, Alex is a friend of mine. Some of you might know him. He's speaking here. He's a pretty prominent video and streaming person. I used to work with him. And it spit right back out. Alex Lindsay is a well-known personality in the field of technology and media production. He's an experienced filmmaker, photographer, and recognized expert in the area of virtual production and visual effects. I know Alex. That's exactly who he is. Okay? Alex Lindsay is the founder of Pixcore, and it goes on. And I could limit this by word count, like give it to me in 200 words, right? And then it goes through later and it gives me his Twitter handle, right? You can find him at Alex Lindsay. Can you see a use for that in your production pipeline? If you're doing a podcast or an interview show or anything like that, you can go get, now again, are you gonna put that into, because the first time I ran this, there were some inaccuracies. They got another Alex Lindsay confused. So there was one paragraph with stuff that wasn't applied to him. So again, you're not gonna let that out in the wild. You're gonna go edit it and vet it and everything, but how much time would it have taken you to go within different browser tabs, searching, cutting and pasting, trying to assemble, da 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 da, and it just goes out, and what it's doing is it's found 8 or 9 different takes on his profile, and it's synthesized all the information into a cohesive profile that, because it has studied millions of profiles and knows what a profile description, what a profile looks like. Okay, so there's another use case. There's one more. So we're going to do a panel, a live stream panel on the use of AI in film production. So I write, give me 10 questions about the current state of AI in film production. And it spits back, how has AI impacted the way films are produced today? What are some examples of AI being used in the film industry currently? And so on and so forth. So now you have a question list for your moderator. And again, maybe you don't use all of them, maybe you tweak them. Maybe you rewrite them to be in the first person or the third person, because you can actually tell it in the third person, ask this question, because it understands first person and third person. Okay? Kind of getting the idea, like how much time this can save you in pre-production? Any questions about that before we move on to imaging? There's lots of them out there. There's
the table about the aquariums, was that the first response generated, or did you have to edit the prompt at all?
So that was the first response generated. But this is one of the things you'll find out. I'll talk about this a little bit too. He brought up the word prompt, which is an important thing to learn about AI, because AI is like a classic software dilemma. It's garbage in, garbage out. So if you're not writing good prompts, you're not going to get good results. And so if you have a particular tool that you're looking for and you've been struggling to get the results you want out of it, make a point to go out and research how to write a prompt for ChatGPT-4, how to write a prompt for, you could even go how to write a prompt for celebrity profile in ChatGPT-4, right? How to write a prompt for sci-fi images in Midjourney, right? And there are a lot of folks that are out there that do, like, their whole business now is teaching people how to write prompts for this, or it's a big part of their business line. So learning how to write a prompt. So his question was, is that what it spit out the first time? That's what it spit out the very first time. Now, I have modified this prompt pretty extensively, and so I have even more information that I can generate when I need to, when I'm researching a specific thing. I do it about fish. Show me all the micro catfish or whatever, and it'll do essentially the same thing. So if you're building a data-driven site, if you're trying to do research for a production, here you go. Oh, you need to do show notes off of your podcast? Take your transcript, right, from your podcast, stick it into Notion AI, and say, write me a summary of this show notes, and include links to all the products mentioned on Amazon. And they can do that kind of thing. Again, you're not going to get a production-ready result, but you're going to get something that's 80%, 90% there, and then you can spend a little more energy cleaning it up and tweaking it. Okay? So images. This one's super fun. You can lose yourself for days inside of these tools. I am not in the Firefly beta yet, Adobe Firefly. I have them here because Adobe is the 800-pound gorilla, and rightly so. And so most people are probably, particularly in corporate environments, the only thing that's going to get blessed for them to use is probably Firefly once it's out. But I also include them for a more important reason, because I think that they, from what I understand, have solved one of the major ethical and legal problems in a very clever way. And I think this is going to be the model for solving these problems going forward. And what they've done is they're essentially using the same concepts that are driving Midjourney and DALL-E and Stable Diffusion, all the same basic ideas, principles of machine learning. But what they've done is, instead of training their their models using publicly sourced data. They've specifically done it on licensed data that they either, and I don't know this is just my surmise, but they either went out to their very large Adobe stock pool and sent every creator there an email saying, would you like to make a little extra money? Just click this button and you'll get X numbers of dollars for allowing your images to be indexed as part of our training our model. So they paid those creators, and maybe for specific needs, like we want a whole list of really good profile photos or stride photos or whatever, they went out and they commissioned some specific photography for that end. And then because they commissioned it, because it's a work for hire, they own the copyright, and because they've either got permission from the creator because they licensed it, or because they commissioned it and it's theirs because of the work for hire. As a result, the derivative works generated by Firefly are essentially theirs, and they can transfer copyright to the users of Firefly. Now, I'm saying all that because that's my guess. I am not a lawyer, right? So let's be clear about that.
So the images generated, you're saying, would ultimately be copyrighted by Adobe?
Yes, but so, and again, not a lawyer, but this is my understanding. The concept of derivative works has already been covered in the copyright law. All you got to do is go back to the Queen versus Vanilla Ice case, right? With the song Under Pressure, Queen and Freddie Mercury, or David Bowie, right? And that got solved. So there's a solution for derivative works already. And derivative works, copyright law existed before that, but sampling in the 80s when it first broke out was a new application of derivative. No, that's all this is. So now Vanilla Ice doesn't have to pay them because he bought the rights from, if I understand it correctly, he bought the rights from Queen. But that's essentially what Adobe's doing here. They're specifically going into an agreement to say, we're going to use this to create derivative works. The derivative work, and we're going to create a model that will create derivative works. We're going to pay you to use it to train it, right? And almost certainly, when you say yes to that, you're giving up your right to sue them, right? Which, that's fine if you're getting paid, and I'm sure plenty of artists said, no, I'm not doing that. That's their option. But now, Adobe owns the rights to the engine that creates the derivative work, so they therefore, again, I can't emphasize this strongly, I am not an attorney, right? But this is what I think is going on, is that they then say, we own those rights, so we can transfer them to my subscriber, who then creates a new work, and then that person is able to use it. That's what I think is the model. We'll find out if that's the model in truth.
On the last part they said there, are you saying that once they transfer over to the individual user, that individual user that creates that derivative work, does that person own the rights of that?
That's what I believe. Okay. So again, I have not been in Firefly, but I believe whether that's what Adobe's doing now, or that's the solution that's going to emerge, is that whoever's building the engine is going to build an engine off the source material to which they own the rights, and the specific rights to create derivative works. And that it will be ruled that they then own the rights to the derivative work that their engine is creating. But as a subscriber, I'm paying for the right to use that engine to create my own work, which I will then own, and Adobe would effectively transfer the rights, or whoever the person is.
That's only like Adobe Firefly kind of example, right? Or
yes.
Would you say that is the same for all of them that are doing that? Like,
I think that's the way it's got to be solved. Like,
okay, gotcha.
It all comes down to who owns the right to the works that train the model, and have you gotten permission from those people to use it to train the model?
Gotcha. And
that's the problem with Midjourney and Dolly and Stable Diffusion now, is they just source the internet.
That's how I understood that, and so that's why I was getting kind of confused. Like you were saying, all of them.
So
are doing
I'm
that.
saying that this is how I think Adobe is solving the problem. I don't know because I don't use Firefly, but I'll bet, because they've got great smart lawyers, I'll bet that's how they're solving it. And I bet that, and whether they're solving it that way or not, I think that's the way it will be solved ultimately in the future. Is they'll pay for the right to use the things to create derivative images, and artists will get paid that way. And so I got into an online argument's probably too strong of a word, but a debate with somebody about that. And I used the example, how many people know who Frank Frazetta is? So he's a very famous fantasy artist. If you've ever seen an image of Conan the Barbarian from the 70s, he's the artist, right? He's since passed away, right? So if I wanted to create Frazetta AI, where I would source his images and you could create images that look like Frank Frazetta's images, I could go to the estate and say, hey, I'm going to create Frazetta AI, I'm going to pay for the rights for me to be able to use those images, and the estate could say, sure, because we'd like to make more money. Frank's not making any more new work, and and if it's selling his original paintings, once it's sold, it doesn't give us any more revenue. They might say sure. By the way, I don't know anybody at Frazetta's estate, but I'm just saying they might say sure, no problem. And once I pay them for the rights, then theoretically I should be able to make that AI available to anybody to create Frazetta-like images, and then assign those rights. So again, not a lawyer, right? But that's how I think this kind of thing will get figured out. Artists will get paid up front for the rights to make derivative works from them. And many of them, and it's a perfectly valid choice, will say, no, I don't want that. My work is unique, and that's great. Okay? So let's just look at Midjourney real quick, and this is actually a good example. Well, actually, so Midjourney works the same way. So does DALL-E, so does Stable Diffusion, but they do not, they have that ethical conundrum. So like I have an artist that I really love, a comic book artist named Ben Templesmith. If you're familiar with his work, it's kind of this weird, moody work. He does a lot of cover work in horror comics. And, I can go in and using Midjourney, I can say, show me a picture of vampires, leaping from the bushes in the style of Ben Templesmith. Is it going to come, and a lot of his stuff is oil paintings. This covers are oil paintings. Is it going to come, or maybe acrylics, but they're paintings, they're not, is it going to come back looking exactly like a Ben Templesmith photo or image? Nope, but it's going to feel a lot like his. Same thing with any artist. Salvador Dali, you could do that, right? And that's where the conundrum lies, because if I'm an unethical producer or creator, then I'm going to do that, and I'm going to hope that nobody notices. Does that make sense? And I'm going to show you an image later and we'll discuss in the ethics, but that's the challenge. So enhancing images. So you can use AI right now, to upscale images in video. Topaz, in my opinion, makes the two best tools for upscale and denoise. You can do it with stills, you can do it with video. And so you can take an old DC-50, one of those microtape things. You can take an 8mm film, for that matter, that's been transferred to digital. You can kick it into Gigapixel AI, the video tool. Gigapixel is a still tool. The video AI tool, and you can upscale it to 4K. And it does a smart upscale along the way. And will it be perfect? In a lot of cases, yeah. For your use case, it's going to be okay, right? Maybe not. Maybe it needs a little more work, or you have to build a workflow depending on the source. Maybe you want to denoise it first. They have a great AI denoising tool, which will sharpen images and sharpen video.
How much is the video AI, Topaz Video AI?
I think it's not a subscription yet. That might change. I think if you wait for Black Friday sales, which is what I always do for these tools, I think I got the whole bundle, everything they make, for $300. And I think it's more like $800 for everything if you don't get like the special deal. By the way, every tool I mentioned up here, I don't rep them, I don't work for them. I'm just a guy who likes the tool, so I don't get any kickbacks if you go buy the stuff. So Topaz Video and Topaz Photo AI. The video is really one tool. The Photo AI is a set of tools that do different things. And then if you want to do image repair, particularly restoration on old photos, you can use some of that. You can do some of that inside of Topaz, but Remite AI is a web-based tool that does a really nice job of restoring old photos, removing cracks, removing color casts, stuff like that. All stuff you can do manually, and I believe some of those things are now finding their way into Photoshop. Just like 5 years ago, a tool on the web that would instantly remove a background. People were paying a bunch of money for product shots to remove backgrounds. Now it's just a feature in Photoshop, right? Instantly remove backgrounds. And so that, and it's on your iPhone too. So a lot of this stuff is gonna, the technologies will get acquired and rolled into the bigger tool sets that we already use, or they'll be redeveloped in-house.
Is there any upscaling that's been rolled into Premiere?
Not that I'm aware of. But I'm not a Premiere editor either. I edit primarily in Final Cut Pro and Resolve when I edit.
Any in those editors?
I'm not really much. So I edit in those, but I haven't edited in them in a long, any consistently, and I haven't had an upscale project to do in there. What I will typically do is I will do batch upscales. I get a batch of stuff and I'll upscale the source, and then I'll bring that source in. So I'll do I'll set it and forget it, walk away, and come back, and I'll have my upscaled source. Motion. So Wonder Studio is pretty insane. Okay. And I'll make this deck available to anybody who wants it, and those are links. So if you ask me for the deck, you'll have a link out there. So Wonder Studio is suitless mocap, essentially, and compositing. I was just telling somebody about it. So you can shoot an actor walking down the street, in the street clothes, not in the mocap suit, and you can take that footage and you can replace him with a robot. And probably what it's doing is sourcing ahead and behind to get a clean plate of the entire run. Then it's probably rotoscoping me out, replacing me with a robot, and dropping me back onto that clean plate.
This is all from one camera, 2D?
Yep. So it's pretty amazing. Go watch the demo of Wonder Studio, right? You can't use it yet because you have to be invited to the beta. So I'm waiting on my beta invite to come through, but just watching their demo, if it does what it says it does, insane. So and you're using a 3D model. So you grab a 3D model, you drop it in, and it'll do all the IK stuff. But that's what it looks like it does. All the IK stuff to make the puppetry work. Unreal Engine. Has anybody seen the latest demos from Unreal 5.2? It's another one. This will link out to this demo I'm talking about. It's insane, right? Have you seen it?
Yeah.
It's insane, right? Like, it's like, how do they do that? It feels like every time this stuff happens, I'm like, there's an alien in Roswell and they've got the ship and they're just leaking this stuff out to us one thing at a time. I'm not really that guy. But it feels like that because it's like, how are we doing that, right? And so what they're doing is, with your iPhone, you do a performance capture, and in real time, they facially animate a 3D model. So think about
of what?
Of whatever. So let's say you, and this is applicable to live stream, right? Let's say you want to do a Dungeons and Dragons podcast, right? Where you want all of the character, you want one guy to be an orc, another guy to be a dwarf, whatever. Okay? You create your 3D assets around that guy, and then you have the people playing them acted out in character, and you run it through those engines, and now you've got a video source that looks like the dwarf sitting in the dungeon talking about how they're going to take down the dragon in real time.
With like, what kind of processing?
Through Unreal Engine, so you have to have an Unreal Engine box, right?
Oh, you have to have a separate Unreal box? Like,
yeah.
You couldn't just do it on your Mac
Yeah.
Pro?
Maybe. Well, no, Unreal doesn't. If you have an S1 or S2 Mac Pro, is anybody else in here doing Unreal stuff? I'm just getting into it. So it doesn't really run on anything before S1 and S2 Macs.
S1, what do you,
It's the
silicon?
new processors, the silicone processor.
So if you got a newer...
You got a newer one with a silicone processor.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's out yet. I think it came out with 5.2, but they do have a silicone native version of the app coming. It's either out or it's coming, so you can run it on a silicone native app or laptop.
Yeah.
But again, your mileage may vary. I haven't used it myself yet. I just know it's possible.
Yeah.
But if you think about it in studio, when you set up a box for each one of them, and all you need is an iPhone, could obviously use a better camera, but you could use an iPhone. It's doing all the facial tracking without markers at all. There's no markers. You look at Avatar and they've got all these little, nope, they're just using an iPhone. They're doing all the facial tracking right there. running it into the engine and re-rendering it with a character instead. And then our real-time subtitles. This is another one. So I haven't actually used these guys. I pointed them out because I needed a reference because I've been talking about this a little bit. But a dear friend of mine who knows a lot of the developers was telling me about this example, and this is very relevant to streaming, right? That he just saw demoed for him on Sunday, which is a gentleman from India speaking Gujarati, speaking through Zoom or some interface like that, and a gentleman from China speaking Mandarin. They're both speaking in their native languages, and in real time, they're getting closed caption subtitles of the other person's speech. Okay? Now you think about what that means. Oh, sorry, I'll come back. Are you asking a question?
No, I'm just...
Oh, you're just like, give me your money? Take my money, yeah. So, yeah, exactly, right? And you think, it seems like, well, that's cool, but you think about how much more natural everyone is. If you speak, I speak a little, my wife is from Puerto Rico, she's a native Spanish speaker, but she studied in Sorbonne, she speaks French, and even though she's very well studied in French, she still thinks in Spanish and translates to French, right? No matter how skilled you are in another language, you're always thinking in your native tongue, and you're going to be a little bit off, right? Or a little bit unnatural, because you're trying to make sure you're accurate in the other language. Now imagine if I could just speak in my native tongue, and the other person can see me in real time with you know, not just word accurate, but eventually intention accurate subtitles. How much easier does that make your production? How much more valuable does it make the produced content? Does that make sense? Like now you have this asset that's even more valuable. So that's here. I don't know if it's in the market yet, but it's here and it's coming. And this is the kind of stuff that we're going to see a lot of. I did an enhancement. Okay, so that's kind of like the use cases. Ethics. It's really pretty simple. If you protect artists, you are protecting your business. Those two objectives are not at odds, right? If, as a production leader, you are willing to steal the work of artists, you should expect to be sued and held accountable for that, which will put your work and your business at risk, whether you are picking a name out of a hat, not assigning blame to anybody, whether you're Sony, a big giant corporation, or you're Fred's video, Fred's wedding videos. It doesn't matter whether you're big or small. If you're willing to steal another person's work, if you're going to do the crime, be prepared to do the time, right? You're going to be held accountable. So having a position, an ethical position, an ethics statement on your website or in your documentation that says, we will not use output from Midjourney in production, right, is an important thing. You're not going to produce any assets, any final assets that see the light of day using Midjourney because you're setting yourself up. Now, how could you use Midjourney in a pipeline? You could do some ideation. You could do some, you could be like, I like Ben Templesmith. But I kind of think, wouldn't it be cool if Ben Templesmith and Salvador Dali had a baby, right? And that baby was an artist. So you could be like, okay, render the scene as if it were done by Salvador Dali and Ben Templesmith. Now you get a whole new thing, right? I'm still not going to publish that thing because it's derivative work from somebody else. But it might get me in the headspace of where I want to be. Then I can hand it off to an artist and say, hey, this is a rough idea of what I want. I want you to render it in your own style, but this is kind of the feeling I'm going for, right? That might be okay. Again, you're going to have to go back to your own places of work. You're going to have to make your own decisions. But that's a use case I think is okay if you're trying to do some really quick ideation. But you also have concept artists that can do that work for you as well. And you can just give them a creative brief that says, reference these artists, I like this feel, find me something in the middle, right? So you'll have to figure that out on your own, but when it comes to putting things out into the public, whether delivering to a client or delivering your own work to the public, don't create that problem for yourself, right? And if artists know that you're going to respect their work, then they're going to be happy to work with you. Can anybody tell me what's wrong with this image? What jumps out at you, these images? This is produced by Midjourney. The prompt was, give me a coyote running through the desert.
The legs look more like a horse.
Well, don't look at the weirdness, because Midjourney does plenty of weirdness. From an ethics point of view, what's the problem here?
They're all Wile E. Coyote.
They all have, because I said cartoon coyote, the reference is all Warner Brothers Wile E. Coyote. And while none of them look like Wile E. Coyote, the style is very much Looney Tunes, right? Okay? So you think if I put this out in the world, Warner Brothers are going to come jump down my throat? Right? And you don't know. And here's a use case to consider. You got a young artist, they've been 22, 23, they're still in the party scene, they were out hanging out with their friends last night, they're coming in a little hungover, we've all been there to work the next day, they got a deadline, they're like, oh, I'm going to bang this out in Midjourney, no one's going to know. And they produce a bunch of images like this, you get them into your pipeline, they get approved, they go out on the website, nobody catches that it looks like Looney Tunes, and Warner goes, you got a coyote rendered in Looney Tunes style, what the heck? The very least, they're going to do a takedown notice, and they could come after you and sue you, and they'd be right. Okay?
Even for something that just resembles and looks like?
I mean, lawyers get paid
Sure.
to make that point, right? And there's enough there that I wouldn't want to chance it. The color palette alone is Roadrunner, right? The style of the background alone is Roadrunner and Tex Avery, right? Are any of the coyotes, do they look like Wile E. Coyote? No, right? But the overall image feels like a Warner Brothers cartoon, and that's all they need to argue, right? Is it as on the nose as dun 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 dun? That's a direct lift off of Under Pressure? No, but it's pretty damn close. So.